So, Brad, last week when Chet was on, he said something that kind of stuck with me.
Well, that could be a lot of things, but sure.
He said, you guys with your NASA's, blah, 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 freaks. I don't know.
Freaks. I can tell you, freaks was the operative word used.
So right now, today, January 20th, 2023, if you go to the Steam page for the Anacrusis, by the way, price drop last week, it's $20 now. You can get it around Xbox, Steam, wherever, $20.
Is that a permanent?
$20. Permanent price drop. Well,
Right.
I don't know about permanent. Like, we might go back up when we get out of early access, but that, yeah, we did a poll and the people were like, hey, if the game was $20, I'd recommend it to my friends. They buy it, whatever. So we're going to try it and see. Listen to the people. I'm not going to say the thing that the other guy says. Anyway, the point is, at the top of that, you'll see a thing that says, hey, watch the developer stream. Do you know where that's running from right now?
Where is that running from right now?
It's running from a Docker container that's running FFmpeg on my NAS, Chet.
What?
On my NAS.
I'm gonna pull the curtain back here in the show notes. Bullet point number 1. Cold open. Suck it, Chet. Hey, you know what? Turns out having a box sitting around with compute in it that is on 24/7 and connected to the internet, you can do some fun stuff with it. And when you have that sitting there, you have ideas for more fun stuff to do. And sometimes those ideas benefit your workplace.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm going to go and tell you, it's like all you have is a hammer. Everything's a nail.
That's for sure.
When you have an always on computer, there's almost always something cool you can come up to do with it.
We talked about it. We talked about it 3 years ago. Oh my God, almost 3 years ago now. Like when we went to work from home out of nowhere, I immediately started finding stuff for my NAS to do that benefited work in all kinds of ways in terms of streaming and storage. And yeah, it's nice to have a tool. B-Link.
Yeah.
B-Link just doing it for you.
Look, I got to talk about my B-Link because the B-Link is some hot stuff.
Your off-brand NUC.
Look, NUCs are expensive now.
NUCs are very expensive. You're not wrong. They are hundreds of dollars.
Yeah. And I mean, we're going to talk about it in the episode. We're going to talk about other stuff too. So just preamble for the people who are scared that we're talking about server stuff in the cold open.
That's at the end.
Yeah, we're doing a grab bag today. We had like 5 topics that we thought were probably worth talking about, and we cut it down to 3 or maybe 4 if you want to count Suck It Chet as a topic. And I think we have a good show for you today.
Well, now we have to prove it.
Oh no. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad.
But the always on, I think we called it getting nasty back in the day.
I think that's right.
I believe that was our moniker for finding something to do with an always on computer that happened to be in your house.
I believe that was the original name of the kind of networking channel on the Discord.
Yes.
Before I changed it to just network things, which I thought was maybe a little more G-rated.
I think people find it easier now, and it's less likely to attract shit posters. So anyway, a lot of stuff, like it was kind of a bonkers news week this week.
Yeah, and not in a great way in most cases. In fact, in just about all cases. Was there a single good piece of news?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some nice space stuff. There's been some other, like there's been a smatter. Look, we're going to talk about a couple of bad news stories.
Yeah.
Maybe with a little bit of a silver lining on one of them.
Okay.
And
I look forward to hearing what that is.
There's going to be some Schadenfreude. And then we're going to talk about my B-Link. I bought a little B-Link server machine that I'm using as it's like 150. I think I paid $200 for it because I bought the slightly upgraded version. But it's a little like compute cube that has a Celeron N5105 in it and 16 gigs of RAM and a 500 gig SSD. And I paid $200 for it, and I screwed it onto the wall in my garage.
Now you're home labbing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm going to put a little box around it with a Sharpie that says server.
That would be cool. I don't think I like the term home lab. I'm not sure. I can't decide, but every time I say it or see it, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I associate it with Reddit in a way that I associate some things that I find unpleasant, like the idea of the PC master race, which is a fucking terrible phrase.
Well, at least to be fair, like the term home lab is not fraught in the same like racialized kind of way. It's more just a little like grating in a non-specific way that I can't quite define.
Yeah, and it's like I like the idea, like conceptually, I'm going to say. I like the idea of an. Hold on, Brad. Was that a Seaman Pro Club?
Whoa! Mug? Do you want to try pronouncing that again?
Sorry. Brad, was that a Seaman Pro Shop shirt mug? That is pretty incredible.
Yes, that is a Seaman Pro Shops coffee mug. Yes,
that is indeed exquisite. Anyway, I think it's because of the Reddit association.
That's all it is, and like that's maybe not fair, or maybe that's
because that Home Lab subreddit is a fine community of people. Yeah, like from what I can tell.
Honestly, there's just some vague recollection of like forum sigs 20 years ago with people posting like 20-line breakdowns of their gaming rig or something. You know what I mean? It's like that hot rod culture of like. I don't know. Like I like the activity. I don't know that some of the fervor around it is warranted.
It's kind of like the everyday carry thing, which went from being about like having a nice flashlight and maybe a multi-tool in your pocket to like, what gun are you carrying now?
Yes,
and like it got kind of weirdly extreme.
It's one of those things where the means become the end. You know, it's no longer like, hey, I'm building this like home network stuff to do things with. It's like I just need to make this thing as big and badass as I can.
Yeah, now I'm basically just running a small company's IT department in my garage for no reason other than because it's available to me. And I have like, once you have a rack, you're going to fill it, I think is the lesson of the Home Lab. Yeah.
And then to be clear, do what makes you happy, you know, like have fun with it. I certainly do. I don't know. There's something, it's not the doing it. It's the kind of like, I don't know, the kind of cheesy subculture around it is what. Look, okay, never mind.
I don't know what we're doing. We're doing the thing that Chet did to us last week. We're gatekeeping, Brad.
I'm not here to judge.
We're kink shaming.
Well, it's gatekeeping. They're fine to do it. Just like, hey, maybe don't be to be a certain way when you talk about it, which is cool.
Keep it to yourself, man.
It's cool to be cool.
Yeah. So, okay. First news item. This one sucks. There's no silver lining here.
Yeah.
There were a ton of layoffs this week, including at Microsoft laid off 10,000 people, which is an incredible number of people at game studios, at main Microsoft campus around the world.
Yeah.
Amazon laid off a ton of people.
I think Amazon was more. I think wasn't Amazon like 18,000?
I thought it was 8, but I could have been wrong.
No, Amazon is 18,000 positions, which is absolute.
Google announced layoffs this morning as we were getting ready to record. I don't have the details on that one yet.
I think they're also in 5 figures. 12,000. Yeah. Jeez.
I mean, that is like there's very little reason to do this right now, given the amount of money that these companies are still making. It seems like it's literally just, hey, Facebook laid off a bunch of people and Twitter laid off a bunch of people and a bunch of other people laid off a bunch of people, and shareholders are going, hey, why aren't we laying off a bunch of people? We should lay off people too. Everybody's laying off people, and it sucks. It's a bad policy.
Yeah, condolences. I mean, you know, smaller scale in terms of numbers, layoffs hit people we know in the games media.
Yeah, and Riot, Giant Bomb at all over the place.
Yes, so. Condolences to everyone who has lost their job and their healthcare. It sucks a lot. Oh. It's a shit start to the year. Yesterday on an Xlander stream, I declared this shit January, and I'm sticking to it.
I think that's probably so. If you know jobs, post them. Help people if you can.
Yes, for sure.
That's and that goes for folks in the Discord too. We have a job hunting channel that it's gotten a lot of people jobs over the last few years.
Yeah, it's cool. Or even just advice, you know, like just increasing your odds, even if you don't have a direct lead or whatever.
If we have people in there who are good at negotiating pay raises and salaries and stuff like that, and they've been very generous with their time.
Yeah. Or, you know, even just stuff like, you know, giving people sample interview questions, you know, people who do interviews as part of their job can help people who are about to take interviews.
Yeah.
Things like that. I'm sure you've encountered this. The narrative about all these layoffs generally has been like, oh, we hired way too much during the pandemic, and then growth didn't reflect that headcount increase. Like that seems to be the line from most places.
I mean, here's the thing. Everybody is seeing a contraction in revenue as people stay home. Like the companies that were making a bunch of money, like Microsoft and Sony, and I mean, I actually don't think Sony's done layoffs yet, but like the game industry saw a massive explosion in profit in 2020 because everybody was staying home, right? The thing is, we're still above the 2020 numbers when people started hiring up. So, this is just taking a little bit of a trim off the top and saving the people at the top that get the big paychecks a little bit more money. Now,
yeah, we might still be above the 2020 numbers, but are we enough above them to keep these employees? Asks the executive.
I think that there's and this is it's funny. So we're gonna talk about Apple here for a sec. Big shout out to Tim Cook for cutting his pay. I mean, part of it was a response to last year. They overpaid him, and shareholders were not thrilled with that.
Yeah, and I mean, we should point out, like, post pay cut, I think he's still taking home like $50 million.
He's
this year.
Like, Tim Cook's going to be fine, Brad. You don't have to worry about him.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, like, certainly it's easy to sneer at this for some people, but like it is, like Iwata did that at Nintendo.
Yeah,
years and years ago when they underperformed, and like it, whether or not he is still like wildly compensated, it's still a lot more than most other CEOs are doing.
Well, he is less compensated than CEOs at comparable sized companies are. Like when you're talking about the largest company in the world or the third largest company in the world by market cap, he is much less compensated than those folks. Now, like, is it still right that he makes $49 million and somebody who's assembling phones in a factory is making $2 an hour? No, fuck that. Yeah, that's terrible. Yes. But at least they're not laying off tens of thousands of people, and he's not taking a pay cut at the same time.
Yeah. Did they commit to no layoffs?
No, of course not. Nobody ever commits to no layoffs,
okay.
Brad.
Okay, sure.
The other thing that I think this is all highlighting is so much of how a company is doing in the eyes of Wall Street and stock market and analysts and all that stuff has to do with the growth. And like we're reaching a point with Apple and Google in terms of smartphone share where there's not any more growth to be had. Like the easy growth is done. Everybody who's going to buy a smartphone before long will have a smartphone. And then we get into Apple and Google going at each other to eat into each other's smartphone markets. And they're increasingly entrenched, and growth isn't going to drive those massive $1 trillion scale businesses anymore. And like we're going to have to, like, we've the last century of economics growth for the world GDP has been based on bringing stuff that people have in the West to the other less developed parts of the world. And like that stops when everybody gets a cell phone. You can't sell more cell phones to people that don't have cell phones. Yeah. Nobody's going to buy two smartphones. I mean, most people aren't going to buy. Some people buy two smartphones, I know. But anyway, the upshot is we're going to have the growth focus is one of the things that is destroying the planet, and we have to as a society and as an economy, get rid of the people who are really enthusiastic about that. The French had solutions for this. That's all I'm saying.
Interesting choice of words. Yeah. Sure. Speaking of haircuts.
Yeah.
A socioeconomic system that did not prioritize endless unsustainable growth and that did not constantly empower psychopaths at all levels of management and government would be pretty cool.
Hey, speaking of psychopaths, New York Times.
Sorry, there was who ran it? It was the New York Times, Washington Post. I forget. One of the major newspapers ran a big story this week that was mostly highlighting passages from a paper from like 2018. It's been a few years. I think this study was done in the wake of Trump getting elected and stuff. But like, it was a pair of psychologists somewhere in Scandinavia, maybe Norway. And anyway, strong determination that news to nobody that psychopaths like people with actual demonstrable psychopathic traits tend to do very well in the systems of government and corporate management that we currently have. And also, I mean, following on from that, like in the environment of extreme polarization that we're in, they do even better, that those types of people even more tend to rise to the top. Anyway, wow. It was very grim.
That sounds fun. What a fun read. Okay, so I've been talking about Tesla and full self-driving and autopilot for, it seems like 10 years now. It's not been quite that long, but we talked about this on This Is Only a Test a long time. First with kind of awe, and then with, oh, this is going to get people killed, and it's going to set back the actual cause of self-driving cars a long way because these people are clearly assholes.
What was there? I mean, I wasn't really paying close attention to the stuff back then. Was there a period of pure awe for you guys on that show before reality started kicking in?
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely. I will when you see. So there's a what is now a famous video. And I'm going to go to the actual Vimeo page. It's called Full Self-Driving Hardware on All Teslas. It's from 6 years ago, so that would have been 2016. That was after I was off This Is Only a Test, but he was talking about this before then, as a conceptual thing. I think before that, it showed somebody sitting there with their thumbs just kind of resting on the steering wheel of the car and driving around a neighborhood in Palo Alto. It looks like. And getting on 280 and getting off 280 and merging into a onto the on and off the freeway and pulling into a parking lot. And you're like, this is fucking incredible, right? This is truly magic. Even if the demo is cooked, which, oh, by the way, spoiler alert, it was fucking cooked.
So when did that come out? Was that
yesterday,
just this week?
3 days ago?
Literally just in the last few days that it, look, I think that was testified by a Tesla engineer, right? Or former?
It was, somebody went on the record with the New York Times, either the New York Times or The Verge, but also it was part of the discovery in one of the many lawsuits against Tesla from people whose family members were killed by cars that were in autopilot or full self-drive. So, okay. So history, there's the autopilot driver assist system, which was basically like every other driver assist system in the world, in that it would keep in a lane kind of, and it would keep you from smashing into a car in front of you on the freeway if you were driving, and not like, it was like adaptive cruise control basically.
Okay. And to be clear, as someone who doesn't drive regularly, like every car maker has some version of that, right? At this point.
Not at the time. Like, it was a new technology.
Now
back
these
then.
days, though, what I mean,
these days, everybody, like, it's an option on most cars.
Kind of, it's the thing that'll just beep at you if it senses that you're drifting into the other lane, that kind of thing.
No, it'll actually turn the wheel. Yeah,
it's actually corrective, right?
Yeah, like if you I drove a Hyundai when I had to go to LA a few months ago, or years ago now, I guess, that had the full self-driving Nissan. These like rental cars often have it, and it'll keep you in the lane, and it uses cameras generally to see where the lines on the road are and the markers are, and usually it starts with like a little nudge on the wheel, and then it'll actually turn the wheel to get you back in the lane if you're drifting, and then the adaptive cruise control will brake and accelerate to keep you at a specified distance from the cars in front of you, and if like traffic on the freeway stops, the car will stop. So this New York Times article came out earlier this week, and it's mostly reporting, it seems like, is based on discovery from these trials that are happening around the country right now. And I'm going to go and tell you, it's damning.
It's
like, it's
damning.
Worse than I expected.
It's kind of terrifying in a lot of ways, not just in terms of the technology that is now being employed on the road, but also in the sense that you're seeing these people just that are in the grip of ideological blind faith, I guess is the only way I can describe it.
Delusional is what I would say.
It's kind of chilling. This was in the New York Times Magazine. The title of the piece is Elon Musk's Appetite for Destruction.
Yeah. So it's the story is a reporter who reports on these. He talks about these fatal car crashes that killed people, and then he goes out and finds people who are seemingly rational human beings who also self-identify as Tesla fans, who want to show him how good the software actually is.
It's funny. He kind of starts this piece by talking about the two categories of people who wouldn't talk to him about this topic. One of whom is people engaged in litigation, so they can't speak on the advice of counsel.
Yeah. And
I believe the other type was people who didn't want to disparage Tesla or Elon Musk in public because they love both so much, despite having bad experiences with full self-driving.
Yeah, that seems right.
So what I'm getting at is the filtering mechanism for who would speak for this story turned out to be the zealots, the true believers, the people who, like you said, are delusional.
And the pattern with so there's multiple parts of this. One is like he finds people who are actually in non-fatal for the most part accidents, where they, like, one guy was driving down, I think, Highway 1 or basically just a road in Laguna Beach, and the car swerved out of the lane while it was in self-driving and smashed into the back of a parked police car.
Yes, along what they describe as a very simple 2-lane straight 1 mile stretch of road. They never, I guess, arrived at a reason for this specific bug, but they said in this period of time, FSD had a tendency to smash into police cars, parked police cars.
The flashing lights were listed as a maybe in one of the other articles, but that guy said stationary objects are a problem and flashing lights are confusing. So, be careful driving your Teslas around stationary objects.
I don't think we need to get any further into describing the details of this piece before we just go, how is this possible that it's allowed for this thing to be beta tested in this state on public roads, putting people in danger? I just cannot.
Well, I do think it's worth talking about the way this is presented, because that's the crux of a lot of these lawsuits. It sounds like they're talking about the way autopilot is presented as something more than a driver assist, right? As a hey, like the video starts. The video that Tesla posted, the famous video with Paint It Black playing in the background, starts with Elon testing a link that says Tesla drives itself, and the video opens with white text on a black screen that says the person in the driver's seat is only there for legal reasons. He's not doing anything. The car is driving itself. The video is a fucking lie.
Yeah.
Like there was somebody maintaining the gas and the brake. They don't know. They don't say how it happened, but multiple people at Tesla testified or told reporters that it was a cooked video on a pre-planned course that was not representative of the software that was in the place. Now, the thing that happened immediately after this is a bunch of dipshits got out in their Teslas, downloaded the software as soon as it was available, and then did the exact same fucking thing in a way that endangers everybody else that's on the road. Now, like some fundamentals, people are shit at driving cars. Right. I think everybody who's spent any time on an American road will agree that as a country, not great drivers. People are distracted. People are turning around yelling at their kids. They're swerving all over the place.
Road raging.
They're angry. They're going too fast. They're weaving. Like, I am fucking first in line.
Falling too close behind.
Yeah. I am all about letting the machines take over and drive cars for us. I think that is a great idea long term. Now, the problem... this is the thing we talked about on This Is Only a Test a lot. The problem, so apologies for remapping decade-old arguments at this point. But the problem is that when people, when new technology replaces something that people have traditionally done, people are inherently skeptical of it and are unlikely to trust the machines out of the gate, which is why companies like Waymo, Google, and a bunch of others were incredibly careful with the self-driving technology. They were only using it on their campuses at first. They were doing incredibly limited things. They had people sitting behind the wheel of the car, like with constant attention, hands on the wheel, ready to take over when the machine made a mistake, because the machines make mistakes, right? So any mistake that kills people, even though ultimately getting self-driving cars online will probably save more lives than it takes during the beta period that we're all suffering through right now, any perception of the machines being bad at this and killing people unnecessarily is going to result in legislation and litigation, and it will slow the whole thing down. So you can't be an asshole about it. You have to be smart, and you have to be deliberate, and you have to be safe. And now, as when we're going to put links to the article, you should read the article. As reported in this incredible article in the New York Times, they believed that the ethics, Musk believed that the ethics of getting self-driving cars online was such that no matter what the cost was getting it online, they would ultimately save more lives. Therefore, whatever they needed to do was necessary, including cooking videos and releasing software that wasn't ready and they knew had problems that they knew would kill people.
Yeah, when I say this is an article about blind faith, I mean it in two senses. One, blind faith on the part of Tesla fans for Tesla and Elon Musk's mission. Also blind faith on his part toward his kind of utilitarian view of philanthropy, or how do you want to term his, like, I mean, see terms like long-termism thrown around. He's got some. abstract belief in, if I can claim to be serving a vast number of future humans who don't exist, then any kind of excesses that harm existing living actual humans now are justifiable.
Well, it's like a savior complex, right? Like
yes.
They didn't. So as an example, they didn't want to put driver monitoring in, which ensures that the driver is paying attention and actually, driving the car when the autopilot stuff was on. I mean, honestly, even naming it autopilot that long ago is offensively stupid at this point to me.
Disingenuous. I mean, a big part of the problem here you can see reading this piece is the messaging, because they even point out that there's fine print around full self-driving that, for I'm sure legal reasons, specifies like, hey, this is, I don't remember what the term is, but they describe it in the fine print as a driver assist.
Yeah.
At the same time that he is out there. And of course, everybody's going to pay attention to what the, once in a century industrialist, entrepreneur, genius, brainchild,
real life saying. Tony Stark, I think, is what we used to call him.
Right. Like the straight up propaganda. I can't think of another word for it. Coming out of his mouth is what's going to get all the attention. And he's out there saying like, oh, it's perfect. We're going to save so many lives. Like, computers drive cars better than humans do. Like, come on. Like, it's infuriating.
Yeah. Like, look, here is the Musk said in 2019, if you have a system that's at or below human level reliability, then driver monitoring makes sense. But if your system is dramatically better, more reliable than a human, then monitoring doesn't help much. That's a tweet, I think. One of the legal complaints says it explicitly, which is Tesla's conduct was despicable and so contemptible that it would be looked down upon and despised by ordinary decent people.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the whole thing. I mean,
we don't need to go belabor it further, but yeah, it's like this is like Ralph Nader, unsafe at any speed territory,
right? Except
for this feels much more real than the Ralph Nader. Like, look, the Ralph Nader stuff. Yeah, bad design. I don't know. I'm not an expert on that era of car design. It seems like maybe it was a little overblown. I now treat, when I see a Tesla on the road in front of me, like I've said this before in this podcast, there's a place on one where I watch them swerve off of the road and come back on every fucking day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, the deployment of this feature in this state is just such an example of reckless, arrogant excess that I don't know what to say about it. I mean, like, obviously there's value in this feature if and when it works properly, but it seems like that should come from like defined industry-wide standards that all automakers collaborate on and adhere to, right? Like, not one, this one guy just kind of going off on his own and shoving this thing out into the world and killing people with it.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, the applying the long term, ultimately this feature will save more lives than it costs. Metrics to this, it means that these people shouldn't be trusted to roll out this software.
Yeah.
Right. They absolutely shouldn't be trusted to self-report data about crashes and safety and need monitoring. Like, I think that's, if anything comes of this, I hope to God that they get this done in the next 2 years before the next election cycle, because like at this point, when I see a Tesla on the road, I'm treating it like the same way I treat somebody who I see that's swerving and I think might be drunk before I call the police on the drunk driver.
Yeah, it's all very frustrating. Like the fact that this is happening this way just feels like another example to me of the kind of degenerated regulatory environment that we're in, that also allows egg makers to triple their prices in the space of a year.
Yeah.
And increase their profits 1,000% and nothing happened. You know what I mean? Well, like, corporate excess is just, hey, not news to anybody. It's a bit out of control.
Well, and to contrast it with there's a couple of self-driving startups in San Francisco. Waymo and Cruise are both letting people order self-driving rides on maps, and I think one of them is driverless now. And Waymo, I think Cruise doesn't have drivers anymore, and Waymo does. People post videos of those Cruise cars doing weird shit all the time, right? But they don't. They seem to err on the side of extreme safety, and they're mostly in places where they're going at very low speeds, like 25 or 40 miles an hour at the outside. Like, they're not getting on freeways. Waymo cars still have people in the car. It's a safer, more measured approach, and it's in an extremely limited geographical area, so it's a much more tractable problem. I'm sorry, I see
those Waymo cars everywhere around here.
Yeah, but
with the little spinny device on the top.
You should take a ride in one, Brad, and report back.
Maybe.
But my point is, like, I firmly believe that when we get to a point where this technology is good and reliable, it will save a lot of lives. Like, I don't think that Tesla is wrong with that. I think that using that as an excuse to be reckless and dangerous is offensive and stupid, and totally. They should be regulated. They should have the shit regulated out of them.
Yes, absolutely. Like the goal itself, obviously the value of the goal is self-evident, but it should be achieved in a collaborative and measured way. Last thing I'll mention about this, just again, with the kind of religious conviction that a lot of people seem to have about this stuff. The other major example of someone who would talk to this reporter who had issues with their full self-driving was less catastrophic than plowing into a police cruiser. I think it was just running a red light and nobody was injured.
Yeah.
But there's an example given in here of he's part of a Tesla Reddit community, and he got a ton of shit from other people in this community for posting a video of that happening. It's like, here's tangible video evidence of this thing malfunctioning, and everybody is basically attacking him for undermining their faith or whatever. And he clearly is also a true believer, but he's at least got enough sense to say, like, hey, if we don't point out their examples, how are they going to improve? If we don't point out their faults, how are they going to improve on them?
And there's an example of, I think it's that guy or one of the other ones that says, here's a place where it always has problems. And then he'd gotten an update that night before the reporter got in the car with him. And guess what? It was fixed that time.
It was fixed, but then proceeded to have half a dozen other issues on the way home from there.
Well, and also at the same the conclusion of the article is the reporter renting a Tesla and driving the route that was the cause of a fatal accident for the people that weren't in the Tesla, right? The Tesla that ran a red light and hit two poor schmucks that were just on the road at the same time.
Yes, and killed them.
I
like this.
And that seemed to not be fixed.
Yes.
I mean, the implication is that was not fixed.
Yes.
Anyway,
that's a pretty pointed way to end this piece. Last thing I'll say, I get quoting a novelist maybe a little trite here, but I really like the quote from Jeanette Winterson, the novelist in this piece. True believers would rather see governments topple and history rewritten than scuff the cover of their faith. Like, that really sums up kind of everything going on in this article, I think. Anyway.
Since the dawn of Twitter, basically, third-party clients have been a key feature, to the point that, like, when Twitter needed to make its own desktop client, its own mobile client for iOS, instead of building their own internally, they just went out and bought one of the popular third-party clients for Mac and iOS, Tweety.
Tweety, wasn't it? Yeah, I was a fairly enthusiastic paid Tweety user, and then they just came and bought it and killed it.
Yep, that's when I switched to Tweetbot, if I recall, or shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
To the point that one of the third-party clients, Twitterrific, basically was the origin of the Bluebird. Like, their Twitterrific's Bluebird and Twitter's Bluebird are different, but Twitter didn't have a Bluebird logo before that. It was it was a word mark, and Twitterrific was the first one that used tweet. I think. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% on that. That is
as a verb, as an action?
A verb, to tweet. The button said tweet on Twitterrific.
And is Twitterrific, well, not anymore, but up until like 3 days ago, was Twitterrific still going strong?
16 years until earlier this week. So last week, several of the third-party clients stopped working. Most of the developers posted a tweet saying that they had API. So backstory: the third-party clients don't scrape Twitter. You don't log into a web page or something like that, and it scrapes the information off. They have a third-party API. Originally, it was just the main Twitter API that you could connect to with limited stuff. Then they eventually spun it out into a third-party API so that it could handle different levels of traffic. API is an application programming interface. It's basically a software interface for software that can get machine readable data into your and out of your app.
Yeah, lets you query them for specific data instead of all the data.
Yeah. So they Twitter cut off the API access for developers who were breaking without saying anything.
Yeah.
For several days, like just Tweetbot, Twitterrific, Phoenix for Android, and a couple of other Twitter clients just stopped working without any warning whatsoever. And this was characterized by a bunch of people on like a Friday night at 8 o'clock saying, "Hey, is Tweetbot broken?"
So that was kind of where I left off with this topic. I hadn't caught up to the fact that they had put out a statement and everything, because that's the reason I bring that up, is that this is very indicative of just where Twitter is at these days. That things break and you don't know why. And it's like, is this due to lack of engineering resources now, self-inflicted, or have they made a policy change and not bothered to tell anybody? It's like the way the thing is run is so ramshackle and unpredictable now that you just kind of throw up your hands at things like this and go, well, who knows?
Yeah, well, and as we'll see by how they did eventually several days later decide to message it, it's kind of chicken shit. So it's another point of note. Third-party clients, because they use an external API, traditionally don't get ads delivered. So if you pay $5 a year for Tweetbot, you don't ever see an ad on Twitter, which is that's worth $5 a year to me.
Sure.
So first, a few days later, after this API turnoff, they posted it. Oh, it's also worth mentioning several other third-party clients like Hootsuite, for example, and TweetDeck, which is a Twitter-owned third-party client that they brought in as like a professional level tool. Hootsuite there's a consumer level version of Hootsuite, but it's mainly something that people pay. Like if you do corporate communications, if you do customer support through Twitter, if you're like Comcast or somebody like that has a large Twitter support presence, you probably use something that's similar to Hootsuite. And presumably they're using a paid API key rather than a free API key like Tweetbot and this kind of smaller indie third-party clients. Anyway, a few days after this, they said Twitter just posted a tweet that said, "Hey, we're enforcing rules that have been we're enforcing longstanding rules and cutting off AP access for software that breaks those rules." And everybody looks at the developer third-party rules like, what the fuck rules is Tweetbot or Twitterific or Tweety breaking? Nobody knows, right? There's no, like, they were traditionally very careful to stay within the rules because, your entire business depends on this.
Mm-hmm.
A few days even after that, they update the developer guidelines, the developer rules, to say use or access the licensed materials to create or attempt to create a substitute or similar service or product to the Twitter applications is forbidden. Weird. What a weird coincidence. So
they were retroactively slapped with a rule that didn't exist.
It's a Kafka-esque situation. Wow. For developers of third-party apps. Like basically what they're saying is, hey, the business that you've spent 15 or 16 years in Twitterific's case, or a little bit less in Tweetbot's case and Phoenix's case, building on our platform in good faith with full knowledge and in full display and with a fully authorized API key for the last decade plus, is suddenly inconvenient to our business, even though like third-party clients in these days are used by a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of users, right? But probably that mostly the legacy blue checks that Musk doesn't like.
Sure. But probably more than enough clearly more than enough to sustain development of these apps and provide a living to the developers, presumably. Good
businesses for these small teams. Yeah. And most of these teams are pretty, like, I think Tweetbot is 2 or 3 people. It's a small company. Anyway, that's it. That's the whole story. At this point, I think it's pretty safe to say Dan Gilmore said something along these lines, and I tend to agree with him. I was thinking it beforehand, but you'd have to be really stupid to build any kind of business on top of Twitter in an era when they're unpredictable and capricious. I mean, maybe like actively malicious to people who are building stuff that makes money on their platform.
I don't think there's any maybe about their demonstrated malice, but anyway, this has always been the danger of this kind of thing. This is just an extremely egregious example of people building a livelihood on top of a massive corporate platform and then subjecting themselves to the whims and edicts of that platform. Like, it's the same thing with YouTube and Twitch and Patreon and you name it. Like it's It's great right up until it isn't.
But you can typically expect large corporations to behave in a predictable way if it makes them money, right?
That's what makes this egregious. Is nobody expected this globe spanning social media platform to go private and suddenly be unilaterally controlled by someone who seems a little unhinged.
Yeah, I think that's that's a little bit unhinged is a good way to describe it. Yeah. So anyway, that's that. That sucks.
I just had submitted to using the official stuff years ago, so I had not really been aware of the state of third-party clients at this point.
Well, so third-party clients, once you reached a certain account volume, the third-party clients kind of broke down because they didn't have access to full API. So like the server side mute lists and stuff like that stopped working.
You mean in terms of the types of data you could get?
Yeah. So like
interesting.
So like I couldn't on the official clients, I could filter my replies to only show people who follow me.
Okay.
That stuff like that didn't work on the third party API. So
interesting. I assumed there would be a problem with, like one of these apps potentially being rate limited in terms of the number of requests it can make per second, per minute.
So there is that. There's also a limit to the total number of keys that they would issue, and then you'd have to get an extension when you sold more copies than that, or if you sold more copies than that. The unfortunate thing is, like, it's not like they're not going to maintain these APIs. Look, if they'd come out and said, "Hey, we're gonna move the engineers that maintain these third-party APIs onto other things because it's time-consuming and expensive to maintain these," like that is a valid. Like I could believe that. So, we're going to turn this off in 6 months. We're going to turn this off in 3 months. Migrate your customers off. Give them a chance to transition off of this thing that they've been using for a long time. Like that's actually okay with me.
Yes.
I mean, it's not great, but I understand that. And like maintaining a third-party API in addition to the main API that they use internally is undoubtedly expensive. However, they have paying customers that pay for API access. So they're going to continue maintaining these third-party APIs. Mm-hmm. All they're saying is, you're not. And the best part about this is they didn't even say, hey, if you want to pay for API access, you can keep going. Right. They just turned it off and didn't say shit to these people for 2 weeks.
Like I feel like that is indicative of the level of kind of reality distortion going on around the behavior of Twitter these days, that when you point out like, oh, they could have given a 3-month notice that, hey, this is a policy change we are making. Here is your window to make your own changes to accommodate it. That's how any one of these large tech companies would have handled this, right? Like it took you spelling that example out.
Yeah. Even Google, who loves killing stuff, doesn't just fucking turn off.
Right.
They don't say, hey, we're going to shut this down tonight.
And again, not just shut it down, but the Orwellian step of retroactively trying to justify it with a rule that didn't exist.
So anyway, Hootsuite still works.
Man, the Musk of this episode is getting a little too strong. I'm having a hard time breathing. Why don't we move on?
I think I'm going to be very happy with this new machine I bought, Brad.
Yeah? Wait, going to be or are?
I am. It's been fun. It's been a fun. So I replaced my big, heavy, expensive to run desktop Haswell E FreeBSD 100% power consumption all the time server.
I wouldn't say that. The FreeBSD's power management is pretty good these days. It's not quite Linux, but I ran a PowerD-V fairly often, and it does clock down like you would expect. It supports most of the Intel C states.
I put the monitor on it and was like, this is costing me. It was bumping me up into a higher tier of electrical usage, which was costing me probably $30 a month.
Oh my God.
Like not all the time, but sometimes.
Man, as somebody who rebuilt their equivalent heavy NAS server machine into another heavy NAS when the first one died a few months ago, you're really making me question my life choices right now. $30.
Well, but you also, I have more people using stuff in my house. Mm-hmm. I'm in a neighborhood where there are fewer people. I also changed rate plans since that time. So I'm on a time of use plan now, which means I get better rates, and I'm not there. PG&E does this thing that I think is kind of bullshit, where they compare your usage to your neighbor's usage. And if you're higher usage to them, then you get charged more once you get into the higher tiers.
What?
Yeah. It seems like it should be illegal because how
is location relevant there?
That is presumably the houses are the same era in construction, so they're like the same level of inefficiency and same number of rooms and stuff like that.
Right. But I mean, your draw from the grid is the same no matter where you are, right?
I look, man, I'm not an expert. The point is, when I got the electric car, then we switched to time of use, which means we pay a different rate from like midnight to 3 p.m. than we do from 3 p.m. to midnight, basically. And the 3 p.m. to midnight is more expensive because that's a higher consumption time for the overall generation and transmission of the grid. Anyway, the upshot is I wanted to build a server. I wanted to replace that big heavy server with 2 machines that would both combined theoretically be less power consumptive than the big machine. Now, I realize as we're talking about this that I haven't actually plugged in the monitor yet. So I may have played myself, but we'll see.
Synology and that little, it's a B-Link, we should say.
It's a B-Link. I got the 11th gen N5105, 16 gig, 500 gig SSD, 16 gig RAM, 500 gig SSD version.
Actually, you know what? Let me know when you do monitor that stuff. I wonder. I bet I could see those things collectively amounting to anywhere from 60 to 90 watts, maybe.
Well, so the CPU on both of them, there's 3 hard drives in the NAS. The CPU is typically around like 5% on both machines. It spikes up a little bit when I'm doing like a Plex transcode to 20, or when somebody's on the Minecraft server. Anyway, so the upshot is I put Ubuntu server on this thing and I spent like 5 days trying to get the hardware accelerated transcode working for Plex.
I enjoyed witnessing your rare appearance in the Linux channel in the Discord, where I spend a lot of my time. It was fun to see you becoming acquainted with systemd and weird Docker networking idiosyncrasies and passing a render device through to your Plex container.
It's funny, as somebody who's dipped in and out of Linux stuff over the last decade or two at this point. Like it's funny what stuff comes back immediately. Like my FSTAB, no problems. I got those mounts down. I can mount stuff left and right like crazy. It's no issue. I'd never had to do hardware accelerated drivers for anything before, right? I'd never had to deal with that. And it took a long time to get that stuff working, mainly because, let's see, I think this is a Jasper Lake. Our friends who work at Intel and are listening to this are probably yelling at their computers right now. It's a little Celeron, but it does have good hardware accelerated encode and decode of video, so that specifically Plex can do tone mapping on 4K HDR Blu-ray rips to make them work on 1080p TVs, so that I don't have to think about that shit on the clients when I want to watch something on the TV in the bedroom or whatever. And it'll do that for multiple streams at a time. So in order for this, and versus on the big PC, it would spike the CPUs to do that same thing. Like,
because that Haswell did it have any form of QuickSync at all?
No, Haswell E does not have QuickSync because there's no GPU on those.
That's a server chip, right?
Server chip, yeah. So I put in a GPU and was doing it on an NVIDIA card, which is not obviously
that's a lot of power for a machine that's doesn't even have a monitor.
Beefy. Yeah. Beefy. So, so this 5105 it's like 2.4 gigahertz, 2.9 gigahertz processor up to on the boost clocks and all that. But mostly it ticks along at a real low speed and just is serving files. It's not even serving files. It's just streaming stuff on Plex.
Two things about your Plex as someone who uses your Plex on a somewhat regular basis.
Yes.
Number one, I am a conscientious Plex user, and I'm quite sure that I'm only using it in the hours that your time of use rate is lowest.
Oh,
I tend to only be on there like late on a Saturday night or something.
Yeah.
But the other thing is in the last week or so,
it's got good, right? The
speed of the buffering is like there's no comparison at all. Like there barely is any buffering. Like it would buffer like and I'm not even. I think I set my options on your Plex to play original files. Because we're 8 miles or whatever apart, and we both have gigabit upstream.
Yeah,
it's like, why not just play the full file and not make you transcode or whatever? But I guess sometimes maybe it does transcode anyway.
So if you have to, a lot of things trigger transcodes that you might not expect. Like,
like
if you have subtitles on a client that doesn't support soft subtitles and stuff like that.
Yeah. So anyway, on the previous setup, buffering was like 5+ seconds just to play something. And it's like almost instantaneous now. It's a very big change.
Yeah. Well, and you can skip forward and back and stuff like that while you're playing without, like if you miss something, you rewind a little bit and it doesn't jack up the whole playback.
Yeah.
It's funny. My daughter has habitually turned on subtitles since she started reading because she likes to read the subtitles. It's like fun practice. And as a result, Plex has become a little less popular in the house because I didn't have subtitles on over the last few months since we switched to the NAS instead of the big machine. Anyway, the upshot is I learned how to use Docker this week. I learned that in order to get hardware accelerated Plex transcode on the 5105, I had to be running a newer kernel than shipped by default with Ubuntu 2210.
Yes, it seems like a lot of your issues did arise from just having a pretty new CPU and not having good driver support.
It's an 11th gen. It's not that new.
Well,
it's newish. It's the Diet Coke of new.
Like, as someone who keeps quite an eye on kernel development these days, I'm going to say that support for new hardware is. I'll say this: it's a hell of a lot faster than FreeBSD, but it's not Windows.
Yeah, fair.
In terms of support coming online for new hardware.
Yeah.
Linux does lag still these days a bit.
So anyway, I spent a week installing on the Metal, learning how to use Docker, still not getting Docker to work, trying a bazillion driver changes and software config files and trying a million things and sending a bunch of stuff to text files and piping things all over the place.
I love pipe.
I mean, okay, it is nice to get just like when you have your NAS mounted and I want to read something on my desktop and not having to read it in the shell, and I just pipe it to a text file in a folder that I can access from my Windows machine and just open up a Notepad Plus and watch the text come in. That it's pretty cool.
That's nice.
The TLDR is once I updated the kernel, everything worked. So probably like if I'd run instead of the LTS version of Ubuntu, which is 22. I started with 2204.
2204 is
which
LTS.
didn't do what I needed. If I had run the 2023, the testing version of the next release instead of the stable version of the last release, I probably would have been fine. But upgrading the kernel fixed the problem, and now I have hardware accelerated Plex and tone mapping and the whole thing, which is feels pretty good.
Yeah, it was fun watching you play through or play out some of that stuff. I also run Plex in container, different kind of container, but it was a good object lesson in the everything is a file philosophy of Unix and Linux.
Yeah,
because that render device, the QuickSync, the video encode engine on that CPU, just like every other piece of hardware in your machine, just shows up as a file in /dev. And so like passing that through to a container often is just a process of mounting that file in the container, or depending on how you're doing privileges and stuff, in my case, like creating a user in that container and giving it group read write access to that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's so interesting coming from the Windows world of like device manager and installing drivers from websites and stuff like that. Just the every piece of hardware is a file thing is such a different paradigm, and it's kind of awesome when, again, you can map concepts you already know to that. Like I said, you can just assign group ownership to users and now they can access that device. But you can even do things like you can cat from that device to a file and get a raw image dump of whatever is in the frame buffer or whatever. I might be kind of messing up the details a little bit there, but it's like, all these little utilities that you know how to use work on these hardware devices just like they would a text file. It's kind of awesome.
Well, so part of the challenge I had was that dev/DRI, which is the driver for the Intel GPU, was showing up when I had the wrong kernel installed, but that kernel didn't know how to talk to, because the drivers are essentially like the interface for the drivers in the hardware is embedded in the kernel. I wasn't able to use the QuickSync stuff because the kernel didn't know what to do with it. So it was just ignoring that part of the chip. Anyway, that part doesn't matter. The nice thing is after I got this going, I was able to set up a Minecraft server in Docker for a Java Minecraft instance, like really super fast, no problem. And then I did the thing that we talked about in the cold open with the FFmpeg. I think that's running in a systemd script on the Metal right now, not in a Docker container, but I'll move it over at some point. And Docker is neat compared to BSD jails, but I miss the ability to just say, hey, each of these gets its own IP address and shows up on its own machine and not have to deal with a bunch of port forwarding in the Docker infrastructure.
Yeah. I think there are ways to do that with Docker containers, but
you have to set up Mac VLANs and a bunch of nonsense. And it seemed like a lot of trouble. I also have been documenting everything I've done on this in a note in notes so that when I have to recreate it at some point in the future, I'll be able to do that, which is nice.
See, I did not do that. And when I moved this NAS to straight Linux, no web UI, no, application layer or hand holding in late August, beginning of September.
Yeah. Just in that terminal life.
I made it in maybe 3 months, 2.5 months before I hosed the system badly enough that I couldn't figure out how to recover it and just wipe and reinstall.
Oh no!
I effed up. It's a long story. I messed up the bootloader. Something bad happened to the grub partition and I couldn't figure out how to rebuild it properly. So I just said, it'd be easier to wipe this. Anyway, point is,
declaring Linux bankruptcy is what I used to call that.
Yes. Having not documented all of the things I had done to that machine, it was like a slow month-long process of like every couple days remembering like, oh, I forgot to go set that other thing up. Like, oh, I need to go set the ZFS arc size again. I forgot to do that. You know what I mean? It's probably the note taking is good.
The note taking, I mean, it's nice because it meant that I could find, like when I accidentally closed the window in Firefox and I closed 35 tabs that had all the different how-tos I was using. It was nice because the one that was the good one was still in the notes and I could just click on it and go back to where I left off.
Yeah.
The next thing I think is to set up a Linux GSM instance in a Docker container on that, so I can set up some Quake servers and stuff like that.
I am running Linux GSM as we speak to run a Valheim server for some friends.
Yeah,
it's nice. It's a little clunky in some ways, but I think it's probably still better than doing it all yourself.
It's so the experiment here was that I was unsure if the little cell, because like my NAS has a small Celeron in it too. It may even be the same processor. The difference is that the NAS, because it's Synology's Linux, I can't do stuff like update kernel and things like that. And they're usually pretty good about that. But also I'm fine having this stuff running on a separate machine. It turns out with NFS and all that, it was pretty easy.
That's the beauty of the flat Linux install, not the appliance type TrueNAS or whatever sort of thing, is you can just do whatever you want.
Yeah, there's a certain freedom there. I think my next thing is going to be looking at the Linux containers that are more like you had told me about a couple of them yesterday.
Yeah, that's what I do. It's also what the Debian project leader does. I feel so vindicated. I use LXC, or I think it's actually pronounced Lexi, but who knows how to pronounce anything in Linux. Which is, the distinction is that Docker is application level containers. All that's in that container is the application and its dependencies. There's nothing else in there. And LXC is more like FreeBSD jails, where it's a full system. It's a whole ass Linux in each container. So
that means I can have a different kernel running on.
No. It still passes through. Just like application containers, it does run on the same.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd need a VM to do that sort of thing.
But like they each have a file system that I can then poke.
Yes.
Like if I want to put something in the Mount fstab for
yes, exactly. Yeah. It feels much more like a full Linux system. I mean, there are some things that are proxied from the host system, like proc and sys and some of those kind of pseudo file systems that refer to hardware are just passed through. And so you do get some weird issues where, like, if you look at memory usage in the container, you're only going to see what it's using and not what the whole system. Like it's aware of some things, not others. But anyway, it is much more of a full Linux system. And part of the cool thing there is that, like, I'm running all of my main service containers on Ubuntu 22.04 because it's LTS and it's like, oh, this is good and sturdy. I've got what I think of as kind of a Swiss Army knife container that's Arch. And that, then I can just install all the bleeding edge bullshit that Arch offers in a sandbox, and I can use it and not worry about hosing the main system. But I also ran into a situation where, like, I wanted to set up the Unify controller, which runs the Ubiquiti access points.
There's various reasons. Docker image for that, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I know. But for various reasons, their dependencies are so out of date that I couldn't install those on Ubuntu 22.04. But I was able to just go grab an Ubuntu 20.04 image that did have the older dependencies that needed and just spin that container up on that Ubuntu instead. So like you got a lot of flexibility there. Like I could try Fedora. Like I would like to get my head around the Red Hat tool chain with DNF and Yum and like all their package management stuff. And you can very easily just spin up a Fedora container with this and jump in there and mess around with that stuff.
That's cool.
It's pretty neat.
Pretty neat. Yeah, that's how I feel about the server.
Yeah, I'm even doing stuff. Sorry, I'll stop. But I'm hosting, all those containers live on ZFS, and so I made one Ubuntu container and installed like all the common stuff I would want in it, build dependencies and shell setup stuff and whatever. And then I'm actually just using, and that's on its own data set, and I'm just using ZFS clones to clone that off, serialize that as many times as I need more services, and they use 0 extra space until you change anything in there.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's like that's like a 2 gig container or something at the base, but new services use no space until you add or change things in there. It's kind of a nice, efficient way to handle stuff.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
The other thing of note is this Beelink thing has 2 Ethernet ports. So if you're looking and thinking about a lightweight pfSense router, it's a 150. You can get the 50. I think it's the 5005 version the 5095 version is a $150 and they seem to go on sale fairly often.
Yeah, I bet that would make a pretty nice router for pfSense or OpenSense or BIOS, whatever you want to.
Whatever your home rolled out. I don't think I'm that crazy yet, but
yeah,
it's an option
there. But yes. Anyway, cool. There's a little project update for you. I'm sure we'll have more on the Patreon episode this month.
Yeah, I'm. The next step for me on that is to move that FFmpeg thing into something that doesn't involve me opening a terminal and typing some stuff. Oh, I also bought an SSH client for my iPad, Brad.
Oh,
I bought the Fancy Panic one.
Oh, did they make one? Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Right, I bought Shelly a few years ago, so I haven't gotten any others. But
it is called Prompt, which is a good name for a SSH client.
Yes, I've seen that. Their stuff looks so nice.
It's very pretty. I like Panic a lot.
Also, there's something cool about like SSHing on your phone into your NAS and running HTOP or something like that, and just seeing this big text mode, like text user interface, colorful thing on your phone. It's like a weird retro futuristic thing.
It makes me think about a future where our phones, I know on Android you can access command line and stuff like that. So it's a choice that I've made. I realize that, but yeah, I wish that there was more command line stuff on the phone.
Can you just on a stock, not a rooted Android phone?
You have to get into the boot manager, but I don't know if you still can, but you used to be able to.
Man, there have been numerous times I wished you could get to a command line on an iPhone. Anyway, we should wrap this up.
I'm going to tell you, if your partner and family are living in an iOS ecosystem, you're trapped at this point.
Yeah, no. Look, the watch is too good. I'm here. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. And on that note, this has been a real voyage of discovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, condolences to everybody who was losing their jobs out there. That's
awful.
Let us know if we can help.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and don't hesitate to ask for help. Like it's like the thing that my first boss at a magazine told me as a budding journalist after I'd signed the papers that said I was going to come work there was, when you work in this business, you can be sacked at any moment. It won't be because of anything you did wrong. It won't be because your work wasn't good enough. It won't be because you didn't kick ass, right? Yep. It's because somebody in a suit higher up the chain looked at some numbers and wanted one of the numbers to be bigger than the other. And the easiest way to do that was to cut people's jobs.
Yep.
And it sucks. And I was like, if you told me this before I quit my good job and moved to California, probably would have not taken this job.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's why I told you after you signed the papers.
Oh boy.
Anyway, the upshot is it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. Especially if it's the first time you've been through this, it hits hard and it sucks.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
But you're going to get through it and you'll be okay.
Yeah.
And on that note, hopefully our patrons don't want to cut jobs here because there's not that much fat on the old podcast side of beef.
TechPod Inc. runs pretty lean.
This is a listener supported show and we want to thank our patrons as always.
Yes, we do. Thank you, patrons.
Thank you, patrons. We especially want to thank our executive producer tier patrons, including Nick Johnston, Paddle Creek Games makers of Fractured Veil, Andrew Slosky, Octothorpe Bunny Crimes brought to you by Nightmares Goats Doing HVAC, period.
Ooh.
This is a direct Twitch reference. Just Wedge, Joel Krauska, Twinkle Twinkie, and James Kamek. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate your support.
We do.
and everyone's support, frankly. So yeah, that's it for us this week. I apologize for doing a news episode because we don't generally do these, but that Tesla, I feel vindicated as shit. B, that Tesla, everybody should read that Tesla article if you get in a car on the reg. So
it's a bit chilling.
It is a bit chilling. It is right to your congressional representative and or senator level of chilling as far as I'm concerned. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll be back with the ever lighthearted topic next week of questions.
Is it questions already?
Yeah, we were very late on questions.
Oh, right, because we did the
December. Yeah. The December questions spilled over, so we are right back again. Question seeking answers on the Discord or
the techpod@content.town is the email address.
That's right. techpod@content.town is where to send some questions that we will answer.
And we got good feedback last week about the not Patreon. I don't know if we have a timeline on setting that up, but I think we are going to turn off the $2 tier very soon. I know I've said this before.
Eventually, maybe.
Look, it's
probably
change is scary, Brad. But if you are interested in that at some point, I think my thought now is that if we turn off the $2 tier on Patreon, we should turn on an equivalent thing on the other platform. Because just so people, for full transparency, the problem with the $2 tier on Patreon is that with their cut at smaller patronage levels, lower patronage levels, their cut goes up. So we basically we don't get very much money from Patreon on $2 subs, which is fine. We're okay, but we would like to offer services like a Mastodon account for people, and the other thing might work better for that. Anyway, that's where we're at.
To be explored in the future.
Yeah, but I'm going to say this is the hard cutoff, and we're going to turn it off on the 29th.
Whoa, damn!
Before the 29th. So
decisions just being made right here on the show.
I'm sorry. We can discuss further if you want. We talked about before.
Yeah,
we can record this if you want. I'm sorry.
You should just rip the Band-Aid off. No, it's okay.
Yeah. Neither of us like making decisions. Anyway, we'll see you all next week. Have a good one. Bye.